You know, I never thought I'd see drama in the rich text editor space. Better yet, two things happening around about the same time. So a rich text editor, in case you don't know, is the document editor in things like LibreOffice, OnlyOffice, web-based solutions like Google Docs, and of course the one that everyone knows, Microsoft Office, or Microsoft 365, or whatever they're calling it now. Now, initially, I was very confused. I thought these two situations were related, or something was connecting the two of them, because there's a bunch of projects in this space, and they're all named in a very similar way, and understandably, it's a bit weird. Turns out, no. It's actually just a really bizarre coincidence. The first one we have is NextCloud and EuroOffice versus OnlyOffice. Then we have the Document Foundation and LibreOffice versus Collabora. Now, we're going to do one at a time because otherwise this will get really confusing. And we're going to start with NextCloud and OnlyOffice. Back on March 27th, NextCloud put out this press release. Industry Initiative launches EuroOffice as true sovereign office suite. At a press event in Berlin organized by IONOS and NextCloud, a coalition of European enterprises and community organizations today have launched EuroOffice, a solution for editing documents, spreadsheets, and presentations developed as a true sovereign community collaboration of over a dozen different organizations. Now, reading this, you might think, oh, this is some new document editor suite. This is somehow unrelated to things that already exist. No, it's actually not. This is a fork of an existing project, that being OnlyOffice. Across Europe, public administrations, enterprise, and educational institutions are reassessing their dependence on non-European productivity platforms. This, I actually think, is a really good thing happening in Europe. You're seeing the adoption of Linux in government departments, the adoption of open standards, the adoption of, open source tools like this. Honestly, I think it's overall a good thing. While Office software remains mission-critical infrastructure, there is currently no solution that combines full Microsoft support compatibility, a familiar user experience, and genuine digital sovereignty under European stewardship. This part here is very important because there's going to be a lot of legacy documents they have. There's going to be documents they want to share with private industry or various other places that might still be on the Microsoft stack. So having that there, pretty critical. Now, yes, you could convert those documents over to something like an ODF format, but that does tend to sometimes break some formatting. So having that support there is a good sort of transitionary compatibility layer. Existing alternatives often require trade-offs in compatibility and usability, are encumbered by legal risks around licensing and trademarks, or are developed without transparent and open governance, lacking any independent, sustainable contributor community. For organizations handling sensitive information and public data, this creates structural risk. EuroOffice addresses this gap directly. It is designed to provide seamless handling of widely used document, spreadsheet, and presentation formats, while offering an interface that minimizes retraining and migration friction. OnlyOffice is very much a clone of Microsoft Office. The way they've designed it, that's their goal of what they're trying to do. The entire codebase is released under fully open source licensing, free from trademark constraints, and developed in a transparent process open to public scrutiny and contribution. The result is an Office suite built not only for functionality, but for strategic resilience. This part here is going to be very relevant to what we talk about for the response from OnlyOffice. Here we have the EuroOffice GitHub. It is very funny to talk about European sovereignty and then host on an American platform owned by Microsoft. And someone actually opened an issue about this, code hosting in Europe, and so far there's been a lot of discussion and not a lot actually happening. So for now, the European sovereign platform is hosted on American infrastructure. Anyway, the reason why we're here is I want to show you a bit more on the README here. EuroOffice liberates the OnlyOffice codebase. EuroOffice is based on the OnlyOffice open source and AGPL codebase. The codebase is being extensively reviewed and cleaned up with the goal of making it easy to build and contribute to. Why did we resort to a fork rather than collaborate? Of course, forking should be a last resort. Unfortunately, open collaboration with OnlyOffice was not possible for a number of reasons. 1. Contributing is impossible or greatly discouraged. OnlyOffice typically does not review or accept pull requests, build instructions are unreliable, outdated, or just plain broken. 2. The company regularly makes controversial decisions like closing off features in the mobile apps like mobile editing and the removal of an administrator panel. 3. Lacking transparency. Commit messages, when visible, often just refer to an issue number in an internal issue tracker. There are quite a number of binary blobs and compiled or obfuscated code blobs. Most internal code comments are Russian, which makes it hard to work with. The mobile apps are not really open source, but just wrappers. Example, the apps have extensive proprietary sections which will need to be re-implemented. Work on this is underway, and OnlyOffice is a Russian company, despite many attempts to hide this, and nearly all developers reside in Russia. Open source is a global effort, but current political situations make collaboration hard and trust difficult to earn, especially when development is not transparent and open. A lot of users and customers require software that is not potentially influenced or controlled by the Russian government. Whether you like this last one or not, this is something which does exist within the legal structure of Europe. Following both this and the press release, this is how OnlyOffice responded. OnlyOffice flags license violations in EuroOffice, project by NextCloud and Ionos. Based on publicly available information, the EuroOffice project uses technology derived from OnlyOffice editors in violation of our licensing terms and of international intellectual property law. Now, as always, I am not a lawyer. I am not an IP lawyer. So, anything I say here? Not a lawyer. There are clear rules and they matter. OnlyOffice is distributed under the GNU Affero General Public License v3, better yet known as the AGPL v3, alongside additional requirements designed to ensure transparency and fair attribution. These include preserving OnlyOffice branding in derivative works, providing proper attribution to the original technology, and fully complying with open source distribution obligations. These conditions are not optional, they are a fundamental part of using the software legally and ethically. Here is a lawyer's opinion. Since 2016, OnlyOffice has distributed its code under the terms of the AGPL v3, a widely recognized copyleft model designed to ensure a balance between openness of the code and protection of the rights of the copyright holder. Essentially, AGPL v3 requires that the same license be preserved upon distribution, that the source code be disclosed, including where the software is provided as a service, software as a service, and that copyright notices and license attributions be retained. Pursuant to Section 7 of AGPL v3, the copyright holder is expressly entitled to impose additional conditions. In the case of OnlyOffice, such conditions include, in particular, the obligation to retain the original product logo, Section 7b, and the denial of any rights to use the copyright holder's trademark, Section 7e. AGPL v3 expressly permits the inclusion of such additional conditions, which upon distribution of the software, apply together with the core license terms as a single, indivisible, and enforceable legal framework. Accordingly, access to and use of the code is strictly conditional upon full compliance with all applicable terms, both standard and additional. Any argument that a modified or derivative version of the software may be distributed under a pure AGPL v3 license, so a pure version, one without those additional terms, is legally unfounded. The right to create and distribute derivative works arises solely from the license grant. Such a grant is conditional and indivisible. Accordingly, any derivative work based on the original OnlyOffice code may be created and distributed only in compliance with all applicable license terms, including the additional conditions. The creation of a derivative work does not give rise to an independent licensing regime free from the conditions under which the original code was obtained. In other words, AGPL v3 does not permit selective application. A recipient either accepts AGPL v3 in its entirety, including all additional conditions, or acquires no rights to use the software. Our position. The EuroOffice initiative represents an evident and material violation of OnlyOffice licensing terms and of established principles of international intellectual property law. We require full and immediate compliance with all applicable licensing conditions, including but not limited to the preservation of OnlyOffice branding, logo, and all required attribution elements as defined in our licensing terms. Only after full compliance is ensured, we will be ready to address and discuss the inaccurate and misleading statements about OnlyOffice that have been made in connection with this project. As for the statement that open collaboration with OnlyOffice was not possible for a number of reasons, we believe that working within a proper legal and licensing framework is in fact the very foundation of any real collaboration. It has already proven to work for millions of users and hundreds of partners worldwide. I don't know where this is ultimately going to go. I would not be surprised if potentially we see some sort of, lawsuit form out of this. I don't know. I will be keeping an eye on this. So far, this is pretty much what we know publicly. Now, like many other people in the FOSS space, you might be wondering, why not build off of LibreOffice, or better yet, work with the LibreOffice project? So, a big part of the reason why people recommend things like OnlyOffice is a lot of people like having a web interface. Now, there are web-based versions of LibreOffice, but LibreOffice itself hasn't really done that for a very long time. But, okay, and this is the very tangential connection between the two things happening, that was something that is very related to the Collabora and LibreOffice situation. So this was all started from a board member of the Document Foundation. Revoke votes related to LibreOffice Online attestation and freezing of the repository. So bring that repository back and let's start working on LibreOffice Online again. FOSSdom has been yet another venue where people ask for either the availability of an online version of LibreOffice, or for those that were aware of the existence, about the status and future plans of LibreOffice Online. This follows similar questions at many other events as local communities report. As many in our community are aware, LibreOffice Online started thanks to substantial funding provided by the Document Foundation. Code contributions were made largely by ecosystem companies, while community volunteers contributed with documentation, localization, and the help system. LibreOffice Online was well known globally thanks to the LibreOffice brand, allowing it to thrive, and thanks to contributions from the community and companies of the ecosystem, until it was forked by a member of the commercial ecosystem in October of 2020. We acknowledge the importance that an online version of LibreOffice has for the community, and that we need to correct a situation that has been unsatisfactory for too long. Many of the details in terms of process and technologies that could be used moving forward need to be clarified in open discussion with the community, including ecosystem partners, whom we explicitly invite to the discussion, so this is now a starting point. To start the process of freeing LibreOffice Online, and to start the journey that will lead to having an online version by the community and for the community, we propose the following vote. 1. Revoke the decisions to freeze the LibreOffice Online repository. 2. Revoke the decision to put LibreOffice Online in the attic. 3. Reopen the repository for LibreOffice Online at TDF, the Document Foundation, for contributions. 4. Provide warnings about the state of the repository until TDF's team agrees that it's safe and usable, while at the same time encourage the community to contribute with code, technology, and other contributions that can be used to move forward. And 5. Actively work with the community to identify how to foster LibreOffice Online, including technological basis. The vote runs for 72 hours from now. This was posted back in February 3rd, and as you would probably guess, it went quite positively as a vote. Now we'll get to M. Meeks here, but ultimately this did end up passing. Who is M. Meeks? This is Michael Meeks. He is from Collabora, and as you will see in the follow-up post we talk about, he is the one who wrote it. He is the main character in our story here. The great news, of course, is that there is one, Collabora Online. It is available for free to download by anyone. The slightly sad news is that some people don't know that yet. Regarding the funding, sadly, this is just incorrect. There are a couple of FAQ entries who created LibreOffice Online and who contributed to the mobile work that present the facts as of 5 years ago around LibreOffice Online moved to Collabora Online. There is now a rather large team working on Collabora Online. We tried hard there to credit both volunteers and those who actually funded things, alongside Collabora's now multi-million euro investment. This feels like a This feels just like a brag. Did you need to include that bit here? One of the major reasons for the Collabora Online move was around branding and visibility. It seems your post starts with an unwillingness to direct people to Collabora's work and continues with the deeply inaccurate claim that the TDF has substantially funded online. That doesn't seem like a promising start of a discussion that meets the ecosystem's need for visibility to drive lead flow, sales, and return on investment, and hence more investment in the software in a virtuous spiral leading to a much more and better free software. In conclusion, there is already a thriving Collabora online community, which is a true FOSS project like Fedora, OpenSUSE, NextCloud, OwnCloud, OpenCloud, Big Blue Button, etc., with an open bug tracker, forum, matrix channel, weekly public developer call, weekly public training calls, mentoring, and constant development. Collabora Online is a friendly place where contribution and doers are respected and appreciated for what they contribute by a large peer group of skilled developers. I encourage anyone interested in driving the state-of-the-art forward around collaborative office to join us on our mission to make open source rock. Following that was a response from the TDF board member who opened the thread. Thank you for sharing your perspectives and historical context. I will be brief in my answer, as I am not a fan of exhaustive debates that distract us from executing our mission. I prefer to focus our energy on what is essential for the future of the Foundation. I would like to summarize my point of view based on the following pillars. The reality at FOSSdom. During my time at the FOSSdom booth, I spoke personally with many people who were asking for an online version of LibreOffice. There is a legitimate expectation from the community that TDF, as the guardian of the project, provides a clear and accessible path for its users. This feels like a pretty easy thing to resolve by just advertising Collabora Online, like on the LibreOffice website, on TDF related things, and the goal is just done then. Recognition and support. In all of these interactions, I was the first to state if you need professional support for LibreOffice, whether for desktop or online, Collabora is the company in the ecosystem with the technical expertise to do so. This demonstrates that my position is not an attack on the commercial ecosystem, but a recognition that we have different and complementary roles. Investment and nature of FOSS. We are immensely grateful for the investment Collabora has made in the code. However, anyone who runs a business understands the inherent risk and strategic decisions involved. In open source software, code must be shared. The fact that other projects already use this code base only reinforces that the software is free and the innovation cannot be contained. Technological evolution and mission. For LibreOffice to remain relevant, it must keep pace with technological evolution. We cannot allow the Foundation to remain stagnant while the world moves toward online collaboration. LibreOffice must be where technology evolves. I'm not sure how that is like a point at all regarding this. Collabora Online is like the online thing, so I don't like that's not really a point that's arguing against what is being said here. Commitment to the global community. Our commitment to our donors, our volunteers who dedicate their time, and our millions of users, providing the infrastructure for a repository at TDF ensures an independent institutional home for the project. This allows the community to create and share innovations under the identity that serves as a global reference for our work. Following the vote passing, we got another comment from Michael. Hopefully somewhere there is room for discussion, since depending on how this is implemented, this could have a significant negative impact on both LibreOffice and Collabora Productivity. The vote seems to put TDF 5 years backwards, linking to the email he sent at the time explaining why. At that time, all the active developers of LibreOffice Online moved to publish their free software product elsewhere, and I quote, TDF has historically avoided explaining clearly how LibreOffice is created, even to its own community. It does not give effective credit to the commercial community members doing most of the indispensable work in any way that can drive a proportionate return. There is little confidence in this improving. If TDF persists in a magical view of where the software comes from non-developers, and hopes to apply this magic online as well as core, the situation looks bleak. The pipe dream seems to be that TDF would control everything through its brand by choosing where to direct interested users. This was done in the past. For example, TDF used the LibreOffice online page to promote another company's online-derived products ahead of Collabora's, despite them doing nothing for the codebase, aside from demanding free charges to suit their users. That left a terrible taste. Why is it that apparently both LibreOffice and Collabora want to present Collabora's work on online as their own? Well, first, leads are important, so is getting the credit, which is critical for growth. Deliberately hiding the workers is distressing and counterproductive, but being fun and fair can have a really positive impact. Competing with products sold or distributed gratis based approximately 95% on our work under the popular LibreOffice brand while Collabora continues to sustain, maintain, and improve the software in an effectively invisible way is deeply problematic. Is there any friendly way of differentiating ourselves, our work, and product from TDS? How does your ask to not create narratives of conflict fit with that? It is surprising to talk about keeping pace with technological evolution without any plausible business plan for funding the very significant engineering work that will continue to be needed. Are there really any, sensible proposals on how to solve this dilemma? So far, I didn't see any, except what was the status quo before this vote. Basically, the argument being made here is that Collabora does a lot of work on LibreOffice, they have Collabora Online, and from their perspective, it seems like the Document Foundation wants to have their own online solution that is primarily based on Collabora work, but Collabora doesn't feel like they're getting enough recognition for the work that is being done here, and considering that Collabora is a company operating this space, having recognition of your work is one of the things that keeps the company going, and they argue that if Collabora isn't doing this work, there's no plan in place to have the work done by anybody else. This back and forth continued for quite a long time. There is a lot of comments here, there is a lot of discussion, but I want to jump ahead to the post that Michael made, that being this one here. TDF ejects its core members, posted on April 1st, whilst being from April 1st, not an April Fool's joke. Pro tip to anyone who's making a website, can we not do this, where I zoom in, and then at some point the text just gets smaller again? Stop it. Stop doing that, please. In the ongoing saga of the Document Foundation, their member committee has decided to eject from membership all Collabora staff and partners. That includes over 30 people who have contributed faithfully to LibreOffice for many years. It is interesting to see a formal meritocracy eject so many based on unproven legal concerns and guilt by association. This includes 7 of the top 10 core committers of all time, excluding release engineers, currently working for Collabora Productivity. This also included the removal of a large number of TDF founders who now work at Collabora. Of the remaining active founders, 3 of the last 4 are paid TDS staff, of whom none are programming on the core code. In recent times, TDF strategy has included stacking the TDF board with non-technical affiliated staff and at the same time accusing others of historic conflicts of interest, overriding past board and engineering steering committee decisions, and violating their own processes to drag code out of the attic. Obviously referring to things like LibreOffice Online to enable competing with their largest single contributor. And that is the core focus here. Collabora effectively feels like the open source project is trying to compete with them rather than having this healthy relationship between the two. This last, apparently with no clear technical plan beyond to start a discussion. Other schemes worth discouraging, I think this is supposed to be discussing, have been spending donors' money to take legal action against blameless, volunteer ex-board members for seemingly contrived reasons, and threatening those that contribute to the project for using the normally free-to-use LibreOffice trademark under license while ignoring the widespread misuse of the mark by unlicensed non-contributors. The link here being to LibreOffice.io, which from what I can tell has nothing to do with LibreOffice, it's just some AI thing that is using the LibreOffice name. Another innovation has been a new tendering policy, voted through full of regression bugs and fix-me's, or perhaps TDF incredibly not paying for tendered code under contracts that had been delivered, and meanwhile selling that code itself in app stores. Then we have delaying and overturning elections after they are run, or dramatic changes to TDF's bylaws by a rump board. Another highlight has been ejecting conference organizers Gabrielle Massey, I'm going to go with Massey, and Gabba Kelman, the latter in mid-organization of the annual conference, who nobly continued to deliver that. We could spend a week enumerating the contributions of those unfairly removed. How about Andres Timar, who was responsible for creating our translation infrastructure, but let's not get too deeply into this deep well of tangled incoherence, so where is the good news? This then goes to talk about a bunch of various things they're working on. If you want to read that for yourself, feel free to go ahead and do so. Before we do anything more here though, because there has been a update here, let's go and read the post from the Document Foundation, because they responded to that blog post. The launch of the LibreOffice project and the Document Foundation was handled with great enthusiasm by the founding group. They were driven by a noble goal, but also by a bit of healthy recklessness. After all, it was impossible to imagine what would happen after September 28, 2010, the date of the announcement. At the time, nobody could imagine that companies that supported OpenOffice.org until then, like IBM, would create Apache OpenOffice to kill LibreOffice. Also, if the project were to be successful, it would require resources greater than those available, and above all, a deep management experience. Fortunately, the project grew quite rapidly. However, the founders' different backgrounds and opinions were at the same time the reason for some bold decisions, many of which right, as well as a few mistakes, which are the root cause of some of the current problems. 1. Granting free use of the LibreOffice brand only to companies in the ecosystem to allow them to sell the software in Microsoft and Apple's online stores, and 2. Awarding contracts for the development of LibreOffice, new features, fixing legacy bugs, etc. to companies whose representatives were on the Document Foundation's board of directors and who were active throughout the procurement process, basically calling this relationship a conflict of interest. Both of these decisions were found to be incorrect for reasons relating to the non-profit law to which the Document Foundation must adhere. They violated the law itself. When this fact was brought to the attention of the board of directors by the Foundation's legal counsels, the companies that had benefited from these errors sought to maintain the status quo rather than finding a solution. At the time, from the end of 2021 to the middle of 2022, this could have been achieved swiftly and with minimal difficulty. The attitude increased tensions within the BOD, the board of directors, adding to pre-existing frictions that began in 2020 when the majority of the new board decided to terminate the plan to transfer many of TDF's tasks and assets to a parallel organization called the Document Collective. Several issues that the current board had to solve stemmed from elements of that project that had been partially executed. The origins of TDC are controversial. One reason given for setting up the parallel organization was the alleged inefficiency of the TDF team, which was expressed by some of the directors. Unfortunately, instead of addressing the supposed problem with a reorganization or some training, the BOD decided to react by creating a new problem, a parallel structure with a supposedly highly efficient team that would highlight the alleged inefficiency of the TDF team. TDC was presented at the LibreOffice conference in Almeria in 2019 without prior notice, raising concerns within the team and the community. This was partially because the parallel organization's project envisaged leveraging TDF's financial resources as startup funds. This attempt resulted in permanent damage to relations between the project's components, and especially between certain BOD members and the team. Unfortunately, the presence of company representatives on the board of directors who were elected by employees of those same companies that are also TDF members caused further delays to finding a solution, which has not yet been reached. Fortunately, the introduction of restrictive measures, such as the decision to forfeit TDF membership status of Collabora employees and freezing of tenders alongside the introduction of a robust procurement policy for development, has resulted in a positive outcome for the third audit. At least the BOD has demonstrated a willingness to break the deadlock that has persisted since 2022. The board has also reviewed governance issues from the past and set clear rules to minimize the risk of them recurring in the future. These rules are set out in the Code of Ethics and Fiduciary Duties, the updated Conflict of Interest Policy, and the Community Bylaws. TDF has been preparing for some time for Collabora's announcement by hiring developers and exploring new partnership opportunities to support a growing interest in LibreOffice on the desktop, still a viable option for many deployments, the cloud and mobile, and in ODF as the preferred document format for governments worldwide. Thanks to the growing importance of free and open source software, as well as open standards for document formats, the concepts that we have been advocating for over 20 years and have finally reached political institutions and users, the Document Foundation and the LibreOffice project are well positioned for the future. Now, let's go to the update from the prior post. I note that the TDF's blog post entitled "Let's Put an End to the Speculation" contains a lot of mud throwing. Some of that content is misleading, defamatory as well as being inaccurate. I believe that the accused volunteer board members have tried in good faith to act in the best interest of TDF based on the information they had at the time. Sometimes more information comes to light later, and then it is necessary to change approach. That is normal and what has happened. It is completely unreasonable to attack those who at the time saw a different picture. there is no point in reopening the 2019 discussion around unifying existing companies' distribution of LibreOffice in app stores and bringing them under TDF's leadership inside a new responsive entity, the Document Corporation, since this was never actually created. It seems to be a distraction. Is this just an attempt to deflect attention from the gross injustice of excluding so many blameless and hardworking long-term contributors? It is claimed this was necessary this year to achieve a positive outcome in an audit which completed last year, but which contained no mention of this expulsion. In reality, a non-consensus subset of TDF's board took this aggressive action, apparently for personal political gain, creating retrospective rules while ignoring wiser advice from other well-respected independent board members. It is even more surprising having kicked out the biggest contributors to blame the departure on them wanting to kill TDF. What is the purpose achieved by removing dozens of people who happen to have a colleague who years ago volunteered on the TDF board and made a decision today's rule and click doesn't like? For all the talk of legal issues, it is strange to get no confirmation of the following ask around the bylaw change that enables this. Had this text been checked and confirmed as being fully compatible with the statuses by a qualified and insured German word in Germany who has suitable liability insurance and is a member of the bar? I'm assuming this is some sort of lawyer? Yes, that is literally just a German lawyer. So this is a whole big mess. There's all of these conflicting different goals here. I don't know who's in the right. I don't know who's in the wrong. I don't think we're ever gonna know because, you know, I think ultimately if they can't work together, the best thing to do is just work separately. If the board doesn't want you to be there, you're never going to convince the current board that you're in the right for doing that. So maybe the separation is for the best. I don't know. All I know is this is probably a long video. Judging by how many clips I have, how many cuts I'm going to have to do, yeah, this is going to be a long video. So I hope you learned something about rich text editor drama, if for some reason you cared. And yeah, let me know your thoughts down below. If you liked the video, go like the video, go subscribe as well. And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon subscribe Steely Pay linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and I want to be rich. I don't care about the text editor part.